more. I'm Rob. Hit that subscribe button, by the way, right down there. It's free for you. It means the world to me. I am bringing you the class war, the struggle, live streamed 5 days a week. 5 days a week. And the reason I tell you to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell, the notification bell, because I can't guarantee what time I'm going to go live. I just can't do that yet. My schedule is a little too hectic. But I can guarantee you that 5 days a week, I'm going to bring you information, hopefully some entertainment, different stories that are in the news about how corporations, how the wealthy are consistently organizing to strip us of our rights and rip us off. So if you want to stay up to date with what's going on, like today, we're going to talk about Suge Knight, which is not really class war stuff. It's definitely culturally important to discuss Suge Knight's wisdom from prison. But before I get into that, I want to talk about shrinkflation. You've probably heard about greedflation. Greedflation is that companies, corporations, the most wealthy corporations in the history of Earth are making bigger profits, and they're pushing propaganda like, oh, it's costing us more in oil and transportation and trucking. It's costing us more to get it there. And we're just relaying that onto you. But after a year, time will tell. That's ultimately what happens. Time will tell. We got a lot of people on these earnings calls to find out what the net profits are, what the profit margins are. The profit margins, just so you're aware, and this is what you want to keep an eye out for. There are a few different economists. I should have got her name. One economist who is spectacular went on Jon Stewart's The Problem. That used to be on Apple TV. He's since ended that show. I think that show was a problem for a lot of corporations and a lot of people trying to fight against workers in our communities. But this one woman was talking about how you got to watch the profit margins. The profit margins, if you're unaware, are what the companies are making on top of their costs. So they were saying like it's costing us more to get it to you. It's like if they were selling you lemons, they were saying, well, the lemon costs 5 cents, but it's 5 cents to travel. It's another 5 cents to get it into the stores. So that's 15 cents. But the truth is, it didn't go up that much. And the profit margins were showing that it was just them jacking up the price, saying one thing, doing another, jacking up the price, ripping us off. And their profit margins showed that. So this is something you can simply look up if you want to. I highly suggest watching Jon Stewart's show, The Problem, with this woman economist. I forget her name again. I'm sorry. So we're going to talk about Suge Knight. And if you don't know, Suge Knight has a podcast here on YouTube with Breakbeat Media. Fantastic podcast. If you get a chance to listen to it, it's so fascinating. Suge Knight, one of the most polarizing, interesting humans in hip-hop history, I would say, just culturally. He was there, he was at ground zero for so much of what happened in the hip-hop community culturally through the 90s, so much. So I think he's got fascinating stories to tell. He can testify to things because he's seen it. Whether or not you like him, remove that from your biases. This dude is a fascinating man, and I don't know if you've ever been locked up. There's a couple times where I think it's a sobering reality for humanity. A few times that you get this sobering reality. One is in the graveyard. You ever got to bury someone that's close to you? Life becomes almost surreal for a moment, or at least it has for me. You get this surreal, like, out-of-body experience. And the other is if you ever get your freedom taken away and you get locked up. It's another sobering moment. It's almost surreal. It's almost out-of-body, like when you're totally stripped of your freedoms and you realize, wow, life is going to be different. So I think that Suge Knight saying that, I think that, going to prison, all Suge has is time to think. And I don't know, I've listened to a lot of his podcasts, almost every single one of his podcasts, and I like the things he's saying. I think he's got some powerful messages. I think he's got some wisdom to share. I'm not saying I agree with everything he says, but I think this man is I believe in redemption. Let me say that. I believe there is redemption for humanity. I believe there is redemption for humans. And with that being said, I think until someone's actions show me otherwise, I think everyone has a chance at redemption. And I think Suge Knight is one of those humans that may be truly seeking redemption for things of the past. So we're going to totally go into Suge Knight stuff. That's the brief premise. Before I get into that, I just want to rattle off some stuff that has to do with the class war, that has to do with the struggle. So if you're out there working, if you go to work every day, you're part of the working class, you're in the struggle, my heart goes out to you. Workers of the world unite. Solidarity with you. Remember, I've been not keeping up with the news stats that I wanted to focus on every live broadcast. 1 in 5 kids goes hungry every night here in America. There's 15 million children that are food insecure. It means they don't know where the next meal is coming from. For every single one homeless person in America, there are 28 empty homes. The leading cause of death for Americans under the age of 50 is opioid overdose. Horrifying. Horrifying. And we're doing nothing to help that crisis, that epidemic here in America. It's truly an American epidemic. And remember that if the punishment for a crime is a fine, it is not illegal for the wealthy. We see that all the time with these labor violations. There was a 15-year-old who died in Alabama or down south somewhere working roofing. And the fine for the company was $117,000 for a 15-year-old's life. So again, the punishment for a fine, for a crime is a fine. It's not illegal for the wealthy. And that's why we, the people, need to come together, organize, and get better laws on the books where if CEOs, wage theft is the biggest kind of theft in all of America. You can combine every other theft, larceny, grand theft auto, burglary, armed robbery. You combine all those other thefts and it pales in comparison to wage theft. They say wage theft is an estimated $50 billion a year theft from working class people, and nobody goes to jail over it. So if we organize together, we could push for laws where if these CEOs, these managers are ripping us, the working class, off, the ones who support our local communities, who are reinvesting in our communities, that if they're stealing $50 billion a year from us, some of them can start going to prison. I don't understand how people can say, oh, well, if you rob, if you steal, if you do this, you go to prison, you learn your lesson. You got to serve your debt to society. Well, how come CEOs and corporations are protected from that same mindset? How come? How come people are okay with sending petty theft to prison, to jail? Sometimes they're just stealing to eat. They're stealing because they have nothing. Meanwhile, the biggest corporations in the world are stealing $50 billion estimated a year from workers, from us, the ones struggling to pay our rent, and none of them go to prison. So if you got that mindset like, oh yeah, if you steal, you should go to prison, then I hope that stays true for the corporations, the CEOs, the stockholders, the investors, the board members, the managers, all those people who are ripping off us, the working class, the workers. I hope that, because there are laws that we need to get on the books, and we see certain states starting to push for that, but these criminals, these white-collar criminals, don't have to serve any crimes. They're protected by their incorporated businesses, and I think it's time we start pushing for that. We can do it. We the people, if we organize together, we have the power. We can make that happen. All right, we're gonna get to Suge Knight and an interesting article in complex.com today. It is linked in the description, so if you want to read along, if you want to read it later, I believe in the Complex article they even have Suge Knight's podcast right there. So if you haven't got to see it, it's on YouTube. You could just search up Breakbeat Media Collect Call with Suge Knight. Before we get into that discussion and the wisdom he's sharing from prison, I just want to go over this. So where's my notes? Mondelez. Do you know Mondelez? Mondelez, huge corporation, global corporation, one of the biggest in the history of the world. Remember, people, these are corporations that are the biggest the world has ever seen, the most profitable. These are not people struggling to keep the lights on, to keep the heat on, to keep food on the table. These are not struggling people, okay? Mondelez shrunk family-sized wheat thins from 16 ounces to 14 ounces. They kept the same price. They own Oreos, Mondelez Corporation. They did the same with Oreos. They kept the same price, but they shrunk the Oreo family size by 6%. In quarter 3 of 2023, their gross profit increase was $648 million. So Mondelez shrunk the family size Wheat Thins and Oreos. Wheat Thins from 16 to 14 ounces. Oreos, they shrunk them by 6%. And with that, what they're calling it is shrinkflation. So you think you're buying the same product, and if you're not paying attention, you're getting less for the same amount of money. And what that did for them was make their gross profit increase of $648 million. They are ripping us off at every corner. What are we going to do about it, huh? Well, I'll tell you one thing, is we can organize to fight back against this. This should not be allowed. This is why we have politicians in the first place, to represent us and to protect us from these things. And they do nothing. Why? Because they're in the pockets of the politicians. Because the politicians are owned by these corporations. So shrinkflation, pay attention to that. And shout out to my little bro for sending me this information. Great stuff. It's stuff to pay attention to. And you know what? Here's one way to fight back. You don't purchase that. Listen, my kids love Oreos, and I stopped purchasing it, and I bought another brand that's a little more expensive, but I refuse to give them my money. So that is one way you can show solidarity. You say, "Nah, I'm all good." And it's funny, like these right-wing people will throw their Keurigs out, they'll burn their Nikes, they'll shoot Bud Light, but when it comes to corporations ripping them off, what are they doing? Nothing. These people, Mondelez is not your friend, all right? They look at you as a mark. Do anything to take your money from you. They'll give you less food and make you pay the same amount. Mondelez, you're punks. They're criminals. That's what they are. All right, let's get into Suge Knight's wisdom from prison. So now I'm going to give you a little backstory. If you don't know, Suge Knight is serving a 28-year bid from a 2015 sentencing where he was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. I'm not going to go into the whole story of what happened. You can look it up yourself. I remember like it was yesterday. It's a pretty wild story. And since he went to prison, I guess the source, I don't know if you're old enough to remember the source. It was a hip-hop magazine. I don't know if there's just a website now. I don't even think they make the source anymore. I'm not sure. But the founder of that, his name is Dave Mays. And I guess he was getting in touch with Suge Knight in prison, reaching out, collect calls, whatever. And they decided to start a podcast. Now, I think the timing was impeccable because right now we got people being arrested on charges for the murder of Tupac, which we never thought we'd see the day. And who better to speak on that than Suge Knight? I mean, he was in the car when it all happened. So it's fascinating. Not only that, but you know, Suge was very close with Pac at the end. He's got a lot of stories from death row. Suge Knight is just a fascinating. I mean, this dude. If you have not seen the podcast Collect Call with Suge Knight, I highly suggest it. If you're interested in anything 90s hip hop, the origins of death row, the ins and outs of even Suge Knight's thoughts on, you know, the culture right now. Fascinating man. And I think prison has really gave him some wisdom. Again, when you get locked up, I say there's two times in people's lives where they get a sober reality moment, a real surreal. I don't know how they'd explain it because it's happened to me. Both these instances happened to me, and it's just surreal. It's like an out-of-body experience. But you get this moment in the graveyard, and when your freedom is stripped to you, and you go and get locked up. Those two moments, you got a lot of time to think, and it changes people. And I think Suge, it's changed him for the better, man. Because if you hear this man, he's talking like an organizer. He's talking about, you know, serving the communities and all that, which I love to hear. I've always thought that. I thought Suge had done so much for communities, hiring people in the community, hiring local cats that he grew up with. I thought that's such a powerful thing. And I always thought he could be such a beacon for good and such a light on a hill, and he could really use his influence for so many good things. And now you're starting to hear that from prison. And again, when you're in prison, all you got is time to think. So maybe he's reflecting on a lot. Maybe he's changed. Again, I believe in redemption for everyone. Everyone. That comes at a cost. I understand that. There's a lot of people in my life who said, really? You believe this person gets redemption? I said, until their actions show me otherwise. I believe everyone has a shot at redemption. Everyone. God knows I got it. So I would like to give that to people in return. And I think Suge is redeeming himself. I think it's incredible. So check out Collect Call with Suge Knight. Now, in this complex article that I've linked down below, make sure you hit subscribe, hit the little bell that will alert you when I go live, because I'm going live 5 days a week. I can't promise what time, but I can just promise that I'm going live 5 days a week. Bringing everything about the class war, the struggle, entertainment, everything I can to keep you informed, hopefully make you laugh, and talk about some things. And in this complex article, Suge Knight talks about how there's a double standard. I don't know if I listened to the call, his podcast, and I don't know if he just meant in society or in hip hop or what, but he talks about how Dr. Dre is treated much different than Chris Brown. Now, if you don't know Dr. Dre's history, back in 1991, I don't know if it's an accused, I don't know if it was confirmed, but it was a pretty well-known thing that at a club he attacked Dee Barnes, allegedly smashed her face into a wall. It was all over some stuff that, if you ask me, stupid. Like, Dre, handle it, be a man. Don't lose control. Like, I mean, I don't know, attacking a woman. Nothing good to say about that. It's just kind of punk stuff, but whatever. And this isn't the only allegation. Apparently his ex-fiance, Michelle, has said that, he put hands on her too. Again, this is all what's reported, okay? You can look this up. It's anywhere. If you lived through the 90s, you've definitely heard of this. Dr. Dre's got a past with dirty papers. That dude has got some DV claims and not good. His track record does not look good. And Suge Knight brings that up, that the Grammys named an award. What's the award? The Dr. Dre Impact Award. The Grammys named an award after Dr. Dre, irregardless of what his past looks like. They named an award after Dr. Dre. Meanwhile, Chris Brown, he says, and again, this is what Suge's talking about. You can read the article in the description. And he says, meanwhile, Chris Brown his crown's been taken from him. I think was his quote, that Chris Brown has just been blacklisted, taken out. And I think partially Suge is on to something. There definitely is a double standard. I mean, look at R. Kelly. He was facing how many charges, and he was still going around touring. I think at one point he toured with Jay-Z until some stuff went foul. But I mean, this was like well known with R. Kelly, and people just allowed, I don't know, maybe because he sang I Believe I Could Fly, and people just like, man, that was a good song from Space Jam. Let's just allow him to do it. I'm talking about Suge Knight's podcast with the Source magazine founder Dave Mays, if you're just missing out. In the latest episode, Suge Knight discusses the double standard in the culture, in our society, and specifically what Suge is talking about is between Dr. Dre, how the Grammys named an Impact Award for him. They named an award after Dr. Dre. When Dr. Dre has like many allegations in his past of abusing women. No easy way to put it, okay? No easy way to put it. Again, you could Google all this stuff. It's all out there. If you lived through the 90s, you definitely heard of it. And Suge says, meanwhile, they're naming awards after Dr. Dre. They're putting him on the halftime show. And Chris Brown here is basically exiled from society. Now, I think it's an interesting thing to point out. But I also think that Suge is just missing a few things. And again, this is just my take. I remember when all this happened with Chris Brown. I was working in radio, and Chris Brown also went on the Today Show to try to like clear the air and come off as like a good guy. He was doing like a PR thing. And on the Today Show, I think he like flipped out in the dressing room. He had like a meltdown on the Today Show. Like, you can look this up. This was back when Matt Lauer was still hosting the Today Show, before they found out about his like, lock the door button under his desk, which that dude's a pervert too. If you don't know about Matt Lauer, go look him up. So many dudes, once they get so much money, or not even so much money, but a little taste of fame, the monster comes out of them, and it's sad. But so Chris Brown was like trying to do PR to like redeem himself, and he just proved that like he had gross anger issues. Like this dude could not control himself. He looked, oh, thank you for the subscribe. A1. I hope I'm not saying that. I'm not pronouncing that. Jesus, I can't even talk. I'm sorry. Listen, I'm really tired. I'm just beat right now. But I want to bring this to you. And again, just like A1, subscribe, hit the little bell. I go live 5 days a week. I can't promise what time. That's why I tell you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get notified. You can join me on the live. And you know, if you're a small-time creator or just a creator on YouTube, drop it in the comments. I would love to, you know, share your channel, A1. If you create here on YouTube, people go check him out. I don't know, just leave it. Tell me what you do if you are a YouTube creator. Gotta share the love. So anyways, so Chris Brown, I think this is what maybe Suge Knight missed. Maybe I'm hyper aware of it because when I was working in radio, like we were covering this daily. This was like breaking, you know, every day. It seemed like Chris Brown was trying to do this PR tour to like get himself some good publicity, and he kept screwing it up. Like this dude, you could tell there was some issues there. There was something going on. And here's the thing, Chris Brown, very talented. I remember his Doublemint gum commercials, and that dude could dance, he could sing, and I was so disappointed. And like, I was like, man, I really love those Doublemint commercials, and I know they're disappearing after we seen what happened to Rihanna, you know. And then you just, I don't know, for me, I write him off. I go, scumbag. Nothing else to say about him. Chris Brown, scumbag. I know I said stuff about believing people have redemption, but they also got to prove, you know, they got their actions and their words need to align with that redemption thing. Chris Brown's didn't. But not only Suge Knight pointing out the double standard between Dr. Dre and Chris Brown, it's not only interesting, but it's also, I think, you got to look at when these things are happening, right? Dr. Dre, these allegations are from the early 90s. We didn't really have cell phones. And if you were filming something, you had a VCR tape in it, okay? It was like this big. You hold it on your shoulder like this to film anything. That was the 90s. We're living in a digital age where anybody can film anything. If there's anything that happens, people are breaking out their phones to record it. Everything is shared through social media. So people are hit with the reality. I think it desensitizes us a little bit, but it also makes it more immediate and we can react. We have a way different reaction when you see things as opposed to read about. Like in the 90s, you were reading about it. Maybe it was reported on the news. Nowadays, your Fortnite, did who die? Nobody's died. Nobody that I'm talking about. Suge Knight is in prison, serving a 28-year bid for involuntary manslaughter. He goes on parole. He's up for parole in 2034. I hope he gets. Man, this Suge Knight, again, whether you love him or hate, I personally like him, especially the way he's talking now. I think he could be a powerful impact in the communities. I think he's got a storied history that I love hearing him share because nobody else was where he was in hip-hop history. Think about it. Think about that last photo of Tupac. You know, we sit next to Suge Knight. I mean, Suge Knight has just lived through some stuff, and I think with that comes wisdom. And Suge is in prison. Like I've said, the 2 times that you get a reality check as a human is in the graveyard and when your freedom's taken away and you're locked up. And both of those have happened to me. And both times, it's like surreal. It's an out-of-body experience. And it makes you reevaluate your life. And I think that maybe is where Suge is. And he's reevaluating things, or he's looking for redemption because he's saying, go check out Breakbeat Media, Collect Call with Suge Knight. That's the podcast. There's 14 episodes. Yeah, Suge Knight, no. He's alive. He's doing a podcast. You can check it out, Breakbeat Media. I think it's the YouTube channel, and it's Collect Call with Suge Knight. If you haven't watched it and you want an easy link, I put the description of the Complex article. In the description of this live stream is the Complex article I'm talking about with Dr. Dre and Chris Brown, and it has the latest episode of Suge Knight's podcast on it, so you can check that out. And A1, you do Fortnite? In the comments, check out, I think if you're watching this later, you can open the live comments and click on his A1's profile and go check him out if you like Fortnite. I love Fortnite, so hopefully maybe we could connect. I just started streaming Fortnite on Twitch, and yesterday I had the worst, like 10 Fortnite games in a row. I was so embarrassed, so devastated. I'm going to try to get on a little bit later on my Twitch and live stream some more Fortnite. So anyways, so I think the one thing that Suge didn't address in this Collect Call podcast was the times we're living in. when Chris Brown was doing this, we saw photos of Rihanna right away. We watched Chris Brown in real time trying to do this redemption PR tour. And we watched him melting down and just showing us like, oh, he's kind of a scumbag. He has like mantrums, his adult temper tantrums. Back in the 90s, you didn't really hear from Dre. Dre wasn't all over the place. There wasn't social media. There wasn't a 24 hours news cycle. Like, you couldn't keep up with that. So I think he was really protected. And that's why the Grammys have an award named after him. And I'm sure the women in his life that he's destroyed their lives, or however, you know, whatever they're claiming about the ripple effect of what he's done to them, I'm sure they're devastated. And it's sad that like those things can be overlooked for Dr. Dre, but not Chris Brown. I think, again, not a good comparison for Chris Brown because he really proved like he's not ready for a second chance. But there is a fascinating double standard. I don't know what you guys think. I don't know, you know, if anybody's watched or listened to Collect Call with Suge Knight, but it's fantastic. Seriously, highly recommended. You need to check that out on Breakbeat Media. Dave Mays, I don't think I'm a big fan of his. Just the way he comes off. Again, it's just a vibe thing. I'm sure if I met him or seen an interview with him. It's weird because the Collect Call interview, it's all AI. AI like imagery. It's like cartoon Suge and cartoon Dave Mays talking to each other, which is, I mean, it's cool to see Suge sitting, you know, with this like animated AI picture of him in a prison. I mean, it looks cool. They did a great job with it, so check that podcast out. If you can, please hit subscribe, hit the little bell. I go live 5 days a week. I can't promise what time. That's why I say hit this notification bell and then you get alerted. But I'm always going to try to bring you something that's fascinating, something that's informative, and hopefully entertaining. I got a split, but remember, if you're just tuning in, I talked about shrinkflation earlier. Mondelez Corporation. Remember, these corporations are the wealthiest corporations in the history of the world. Meantime, you, me, and your neighbors are just trying to get by, pay rent, put food on the table, get gas. And Mondelez shrunk. They own Oreo, Wheat Thin. They own like probably half the grocery store. But specifically with Oreo and Wheat Thins, they shrunk Oreo family size by 6%. They shrunk Wheat Thins from family size from 16 to 14 ounces, and that made their profits in Q3 of last year gross more than $648 million. So just be aware of that, all right? Be careful where you spend your money. I want to talk some more about Suge Knight, but really, I got to wrap it up because there's other fascinating things he went into. Yo, there is some YouTube beefing, and I never, in 2024, I never in my life would have thought Suge Knight from prison would be involved in like some YouTube drama, but it's happening. Maybe I'm gonna have to go live later, because if you haven't been following along with the Tupac saga on YouTube and some of the YouTubers that talk about Tupac, and then Suge Knight kind of chiming in on it today, he addressed something specifically about these punks that are lying about Pac, that are just doing stuff for views and money. They're really trying to capitalize off the Tupac story, and I'm glad Suge Knight called them out. But if you're not aware of that, I've been following that real close because this is fascinating, and I've been waiting for Suge to chime in on it. And finally, in this last episode, go watch it. Go watch the last episode of Collect Call with Suge Knight, and then maybe we'll connect again. Maybe I'll jump on later and we'll talk about that, because this drama is juicy. And I couldn't believe Suge Knight chimed in on it. I was so excited. I was like, yes, he's addressing these punks. He called this one dude a racist that he hacked into his social media account. I loved it. I was like, get him, Suge. I hope Suge gets out on parole so we can check these dudes in reality. Woo! They won't be acting so tough if Suge gets parole. Anyways, respect to Suge for doing this podcast and coming out and sharing, you know, his story, his side of things, because whether or not, again, I don't know how people feel about him, but that man is fascinating. And now he's sharing this wisdom. He's getting deep. He's saying some really just good things, man. I like some of the things he's saying, and I respect him for just being himself. So let's check in later. So hit subscribe, hit the notification. That way, if I go live a little bit later this evening, like dinner time-ish, you'll get the alert and we can talk about Collect Call with Suge Knight. Thank you so much for subscribing. It means the world to me. It's free, and I'm really trying to grind it out on YouTube. Man, I got to get out of this dead-end job of work, so please help me make it on YouTube, and I can't do that without you. Seriously, I cannot do it without you. You subscribing, you watching, that means the world to me. I thank you so much. Costs you nothing. It means the world to me. So if you could hit that subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will be live 5 days a week, sometimes twice a day. Let's go live a little bit later. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one. If you're in the struggle, leave it in the comment. I'll say this all the time, man. If you're struggling, leave it in the comments. What I could pray for you, what I could send you good energy for, because I understand what it's like to struggle. It sucks, and I hate to know that my neighbors, my community is not in the best position we could be in, and we're being oppressed by the wealthiest people in the history of the world, and it sucks. So solidarity with you. You ain't alone. Speak up, speak out, speak to somebody you love, to somebody that cares for you if you're struggling, and thanks so much.